All right, what's up, everyone? App founders, marketers, operators. Thank you for joining us. My name is Nick Grayson. I'm the co-founder and head of growth at RoundSquared. We are a mobile growth partner specializing in user acquisition for mobile apps. Today, I'm joined by the founder of QTA, Sal Mohammed. He has closed over 200 million in partnership deals and somehow still has the time to answer my LinkedIn DMs. He's going to break down what might be the most underrated growth lever in the game right now, which is partnerships. With fast-moving AI, it's not just about how quickly you can build, it's about who you build with and the APIs that you plug into. So we're going to talk real strategy, how to form partnerships that actually move the needle. Sal, thanks for joining us.
Nick, pleasure to have me. Pleasure to be here. It's really excited to talk with the community. I've watched quite a lot of your different talks as well. So yeah, excited to get diving right in.
Man. Love it. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and let you share screen real quick. Make sure this is pulled up. There we go. All right, let's hit it.
Are you all good on this end? Can you see?
All good. Let's roll.
Perfect. Cool. Well, yes, great to meet you all. I'm Sal. I'm founder of QTA. We are a partnerships company. So we're effectively trying to build the partnership layer for AI. And what that means is we think that the partnerships that you strike will be more important than the technology you build. And that doesn't mean technology is not important. It just means that you can have a lot of strategic lock-ins and benefits by leveraging the right partnerships. Example I use is Apple Intelligence. You've had OpenAI and Apple do a partnership that took them from 250 million users to 2.2 billion. But that isn't really the main lock-in. The lock-in is a difficulty now for anybody else to compete. If you are Claude and you'll have to release something pretty spectacular to decouple me from something that's now embedded into my browser, into my Siri, into my mail, into my notes. So that's how you can use partnerships to actually change the game by not just unlocking a whole new customer base, but actually solidifying and unlocking them in. So yeah, like I said, I'm founder of QTA. I used to look after tech partnerships for Google in the UK and Ireland. I now look after what is called Zoogla, which is ex-Google and DeepMind network across EMEA, which is 15,000 ex-Google and DeepMind staff. So we run a whole host of AI summits and different growth strategies for companies. And then I also chair the UK Partnership Network, which is a network of 1,000 different partnership managers across the country in the UK. Currently actually calling from New York. So if anyone's on EDT time, hello. And if you're on GMT time or BST, then thanks for joining us so late. I just want to start by saying we've been lied to. The narrative of how companies actually grow is kind of misleading. And my whole philosophy is that most of the large companies that we see are partnership companies anyway. They just kind of mask it. So if you take a company like Google, for instance, how did it get ad dominance? It got ad dominance by building an agency partnership network. How does the YouTube system work? It works through a whole network of influencer partnerships. How does Google Pay work? It's underpinned by a whole host of banking partnerships. How does Waymo function? You call the Waymo through an app co-developed by Uber, using a car that's also co-developed by Jaguar. If you look at Android, the massive rise has actually been from developer partnerships, many of yourselves, right, building these apps. And if you look at DeepMind, they've got some really groundbreaking partnerships, like with the Moorfield Eye Hospital trying to cure blindness, and now with health facilities all around the world. But you could look at Microsoft and say the same thing. How did it get into the computers that we have? Not many people bought their Windows. If you look at Salesforce, you look at a similar story. But even if you take more of the more recent companies, if you look at Anduril, for instance, OpenAI integration now is, changing warfare. The NVIDIA and OpenAI relationship, Microsoft Copilot coming out from OpenAI, even now The Guardian and actually feeding a lot of the news content into OpenAI. So most companies actually go through partnerships, and that could be Netflix with its distributed network of content providers. It's all the same, really. And what I want to do here is really talk about partnerships, but as it pertains to app and app growth, particularly. But yeah, basically, most of the world is partnerships because most of the world's GDP moves indirectly. Meaning, if you want some oat milk, you don't turn up to Oatly's door with a cup in your hand and say, how much. You go to a distributed licensor who's got a trade agreement with them, who's got pricing, who's got all these complicated structures that sit behind that we don't really think about. And yeah, 75% of the world's GDP actually moves this way. This is an interesting take, but I'm going to use Drake as arguably one of the entertainment industry's king of partnerships. So here's one of my favorite sort of collaborations just because of what it did and unlocked. So Drake was the first artist to hit 50 billion streams on Spotify. Spotify paid several tens of millions to be the exclusive shirt provider for Barcelona Football Club. So what they did is, that's getting a bit stale. Why don't we swap Drake's OVO brand in to celebrate his announcement? But let's also do it on El Clasico. So that's a game between Real Madrid and Barcelona, one of the biggest games in sport, where you've got nearly over a billion people watching that game. So you've got a three-way situation there where Drake can now promote that to his nearly 200 million followers. You've got Spotify announcing that and getting more value out of the deal because, just having Spotify each week might get a bit stale. And then also Barcelona and Real Madrid suddenly being able to reach new demographics and new audiences. So I just think this is a really good example of how a partnership done well can really sort of, get you thinking. And that's kind of what I really want to say, basically. And the opening remark about OpenAI and Apple Intelligence is actually that you can have a 3D checkmate by playing the right partnership. So that's kind of what you want to be thinking about when you're looking through the partnership lens. How can I checkmate my opponents with this partnership that gives me a strategic moat? So if you just take a quick look, let's say we just take a normal startup. Let's say you are an email marketing platform and you've built the next level of AI. You blink and an email is created and it's personal to every customer. Well, you've got two options typically, usually. You can spend a bunch of money on ads, or you can go and hire a sales team for a product like this. It probably doesn't make sense unless it's at a larger scale. Or you could go to someone like GoDaddy and say, hey, by the way, you get 1 million people coming and buying domains from you each week. How about you add us to your checkout basket and we'll give you 20% of what we make? And you can have a situation there where now GoDaddy make more from that deal than they do from the actual domain since they're subsidized in the first place. And then they can go more aggressively and sort of scale out. So you can see how these things can come together. But, what if we switched it for an app? Tree App is one of my favorite apps. Basically allows you to do different actions and engage with different ads in order to plant trees. And, they want to scale effectively an NGO, really sort of, doing this as a philanthropic basis, not really trying to, extract as much capitalist as they can. But, what about if you had a campaign that was save the Amazon with Amazon? And actually, you then did a partnership with Amazon Fresh to say every delivery that we do through Amazon Fresh or Whole Foods, we'll actually plant a tree with Tree App for. And then you've got an interesting dynamic and situation there where Tree App are getting a whole bunch of customers and distribution from Amazon, but also Amazon are getting a massive halo effect compared to the competitors because they're doing something great for the environment. And it's all wrapped up in their brand, their ethos, what they stand for, etc., lowering emissions, helping the customer, helping society. So you can see how these partnerships can sort of link and sort of happen. This is an example of like a partnership maybe not to do. So Deliveroo is an app in the UK, and they were slammed for basically doing buy now, pay later for their food. And I think Martin Lewis, who's a UK very famous money expert, said, borrowing should be for planned one-off budgeted purchase, not a cheeky Nando's, which is a chicken shop in the UK. So I think this is kind of how not to do partnerships. But then you can maybe look at a time where some great partnerships were formed. I think back to COVID for a real stand-up moment for the partnership community. If you think about it, we had data partnerships, the likes of Johns Hopkins sharing live updates on cases. We had technological partnerships, F1 teams that were typically arch enemies and rivals, sharing technology, building defibrillators, building breathing equipment, helping in any way they can. And then you had research partnerships. The thing that dug a lot of people out of the era was actually, the find of a vaccine. In the UK, we had Oxford AstraZeneca. Again, a partnership. How do these things happen? What do the commercials look like? Who set that up? How do they decide which countries to give it to free for? How do they do the manufacturing? Who owns the marketing? These are all the things to really think about when it comes to partnerships. So this is a great one in the app space. So TfL, which is basically the London Transport for London, it's basically the transport body of the metropolitan area of London. And they partnered with Google to basically make the road safer for cyclists. So they took crash data and looked at where crashes happen for cyclists and in which parts of the cities at what times. And then also TfL gave their extensive map network to Google so that then the product can redirect people to safer routes and less busy routes on their daily commute. So when you're looking at millions of people cycling each day, these things can really add up. So this is just a great example of how an app can actually just garner a lot of utility from the right type of partnership. Here's another one. So Headspace partnered with Netflix to basically unwind your mind. So through there, you can have dedicated Headspace shows for Netflix to help people calm and sort of switch off and relax. But you can see here also, it then comes with a 14-day trial of Headspace. So you can start to then look at, I think, Netflix, I think, better part of 300-400 million people around the world using their service. Suddenly, Headspace get all this distribution, but likewise, they have something unique to stave off competitors for. So if you're looking at Disney Plus or you're looking at Amazon Prime, you might think twice because of some of these embedded benefits. And, why are we having this conversation? I think, we all know now that the AI revolution is here. Things are going to be changing. The way that we interact with products is going to change. The products that we actually build are going to change. And yeah, this is just a really exciting and interesting time. And I think it's going to do two things. One, it's going to create a plethora of apps. Apps for every single use case and every single individuality will be created. Vibe coding is big now. I think Microsoft forecast that of the 500 million apps, not just mobile apps, but apps that are going to be created over the next 5 years, 450 million are going to be built with no-code solutions. So we're seeing a massive shift in how people can build things, all these no-code tools, people using things like Lovable. Personally, I've used a lot of these things. I don't think they're ready. They're not going to take any of our jobs anytime soon. But what I would worry about is actually professional app developers leveraging these tools to become 10 times more efficient. So either way, we're going to see massive disruption and proliferation in the number of apps that are available. And then the second thing that's going to be really interesting is what I call this headless layer. So right now, people use things like CRMs, for instance, that you might not need a CRM in the future, where you can actually just have an agent follow and track and update things centrally in their brain and update things, give you reminders without actually having to ever interface with something like an actual interface. And with that, it then creates this question of how do I make my app valuable? And when technology is becoming easier and easier to replicate, how do I lock in that value? And I think partnerships is the answer to that, where you're able to stack on functionality from other players. You're able to make people's lives a lot easier and go and take people on that journey that wants to be malleable and adaptable to an agentic flow. So AI is really the key piece of here. We're also going to see the ease of APIs. We're looking at things like Model Context Protocol now, agents doing a lot of the work. The barriers to integrations are falling faster than ever as well. So not only is it a time of massive disruption, it's a time of massive opportunity to now integrate partnerships and alliances to steal a lead and lock in benefits for your products. Example, so I just kind of created a fictional partnership that could be done in the app space. So MyFitnessPal, which is a calorie counting app and nutrition app, partners with Sleep Cycle to sync your sleep with your diet, right? So this is sort of just to get you thinking about partnerships and how they can be created and how you can form them. So imagine a world where your calorie counter of what you ate that day, how much coffee you drank, is then synced to Sleep Cycle to recommend times to go to sleep, to recommend times to wake up, to add things bidirectionally going back to your MyFitnessPal to say, hey, if you do want to get 8 hours today, don't have any more coffee after this one you've just logged. So how do you have these interactions move app to app? I think app to app partnerships are super interesting, although they don't necessarily have to be app to app partnerships, but I think it's an interesting space. So if you take a partnership like this, you can start to see how much they can benefit from sharing each other's database, from exchanging data, making a customer's life easier, to the point where it becomes hard for any sort of tech play to simply come in and replace them, because it's about the partnership, it's about the negotiation that happened beneath this. But what if we took it a step further? What if we create what I call a coalition partnership? So maybe it starts with MyFitnessPal and you tracking your calories and nutrition. Maybe it then goes to Sleep Cycle in the partnership we just described. Maybe that data is then fed to 8 Sleep to also regulate the temperature of your mattress during your sleep to basically help rebalance or give something a nudge, or even adjust your pillow height, etc. They've got some new mattresses out now. 8 Sleep, a product that the F1 team has also used, so very highly recommended. But then what if that also synced to your Calendly? So that could say, hey, by the way, move this 10 o'clock meeting because Sal needs an extra 20 minutes. Or I'm going to put a slot in for the gym because we've drank way too much caffeine, etc. Or maybe even it goes from Calendly into a tool like Motion that actually organizes and rearranges your day, right? So you can see how you can take one very simple partnership, add a whole range of players in, but now you've got a string of 4 or 5 partners that make it pretty much impenetrable for anybody else to come in and be the natural choice, because you come with all of these other benefits added and baked in. So that's really the art of what you want to try and do from this sort of deal. So yeah, we'll move on to the practical. So how do you actually create and drive these partnerships? So it's first useful to look at why people partner and why you might want to partner and what draws out some of the issues and challenges or opportunities you're facing in your businesses. So speed is an essential one. This was COVID 101, right? We needed a vaccine quickly. How do we partner to make that happen? Tech is a great one. So it might be a cutting edge piece of AI that you want to integrate into your product. How can you get that deal? How can you get the right wholesale rates for the API calls to make that make sense commercially? Base, this is a very common one for 1 apps and 2 startups. So you've got a really great product, really great app. Why wouldn't you then go and work with a telco who usually has about a quarter of the companies or consumers in any country. Usually there's 3 or 4 telcos in each country, meaning you've got access to the whole base. Why wouldn't you do a telco partnership and get tens of millions of customers to now push your app through? Trends, it might be reacting to something really fast. So it could be the latest AI update. It could be something around blockchain. How can you, rather than having to build it yourself, actually look and partner in sort of interesting ways to get that done? And then 2, it just could be reciprocal. You could be very tightly knit in the ecosystem, very next to each other, and it's, why don't you talk about us and we'll talk about you? We trust you. You're a great product. We'd love to see our customers use you. Why don't we have a 2-way agreement going there? So, yeah, I think for the apps specifically, I think there are 3 ways to really look at it. I think 1, you want to be looking at this as a distribution channel. So Tree app and the Amazon example I gave, for instance, how can you get to new users? 2 is, how can you make your product stronger? So the TFL was a really good example of that one, where actually now you're in my product, that seems like a no-brainer. And another Google Maps instance is actually the fact that you can get your live metro timetables from the app, right? That's a partnership that was created. Obviously, it works very well for the customer, but it keeps you into the app and using that because of the real-time information that it has. That's how some of these companies really scaled and created a differentiator. And then some of it could be actually something that benefits beyond your ecosystem. So actually, how can you then create data or an experience in your app that then you pass on to somebody else to add even more value and make your customers happy? So maybe all of that data that we collected in the partnership example earlier with the calorie tracker and the sleep tools and the scheduling, what if actually that's taking health vitals and it's working with a company like Nourished, for instance, that do personalized vitamins, or that's all then feeding back to your Whoop to then create you a personalized work plan? That's something outside of your app, but actually the value was created and swirled around in your app, and actually people want to still use your product because of that neat knitting that you're providing for the customers. So the thing about partnerships are that they can either be a black hole or a sinkhole. So a black hole condensing time and space and getting you to where you want to be faster, hence why we call our company Quick to Act, QTA, or a sinkhole that just absorbs all your resources and time and shows little to come with it. And the reason why a lot of the partnerships fail is people misunderstand what a partnership requires and what really makes a great partnership. And I always say that a partnership doesn't end with a handshake, it starts with one. So if there's one thing you can really take away, that is the thing, which is the partnership is actually the easy bit. Getting the agreement is the easy bit. It's doing all the work that comes after that people need to be ready for and go on that journey of. And that's really what we do as a company, is really go through each of those steps of what it takes to really drive a great partnership. So if you look at each of these things, imagine there's 4 or 5 things that sit beneath them, right? So you define a strategy. Okay, who am I going to go to? Why would I go to them? Are there enough margins in it for me? The pricing, the billing, the technical integrations, the trials, the customer service, the training, the refund systems, all these things have to be really thought about. So when you're going after these partnerships, make sure you take the seriousness that they require to make them happen. And a way that we kind of look at this is a 3-step process in terms of generating partnership ideas. So you're all going to have nuances and strategic advantages that you can leverage. And you want to really look at it from this sort of lens, which is, who has a pool of the customers that you are looking for? So if you are a health app, for instance, maybe a nutrition app, maybe it's Equinox, maybe it's Planet Fitness, maybe, it depends on what product you've got at what price point, but you've got to find that pool. Where is a watering hole? And then the second part is, what is the behavior pattern that these people are displaying? Like, where are they shopping? How are they sleeping? What type of things do they typically buy? and which partners are in each of those places in the chain that I can go out and try and have a strategic alignment and fit to. And then the last is, how can you have something that's better than the sum of its parts? So, how can 1 + 1 = 3? And I think the example we had earlier about sleep is probably a good example of that, where, you combine these two things, and actually it's not just an aggregation of that, it's something that can transform your whole life if you get the right sleep, right? And if you get the right partners involved. So you always want to be looking for that massive leverage that a partnership can offer. And they're always executed for a host of different reasons. So you can have a referral type partnership. You could have a sell-through partnership where somebody actually sells a product for you and gets a kickback, a little bit like that GoDaddy example. You can have a reciprocal partnership where, okay, put me into your newsletter, I'll put you into my newsletter, or let's share leads, or once they've bought my product, yours is the next upsell, and vice versa. Or you can create a whole new product completely. And, probably you won't want to create a whole new app completely, but the functionality that you get is usually a new functionality when you combine these two things together. And I think you see some really interesting companies in the health space doing that, from Nike to Whoop to a whole host of others. So what are the tips that I would give for making them work? So I think it's useful to first think of why they actually fail. So the first is a lack of experience. So a lot of people find that list of partnership touch points that I showed earlier a little bit too late. So it's, how can you actually look through these and walk through them and take it with the seriousness that it requires? A misaligned objective. So you might work with a company that wants super fast growth, but you want profitable growth. And actually, maybe those two things don't square up, but you've done a partnership anyway. So you actually really need to be on the same page and understand what you're both getting into. Weak stakeholder support. So we see this usually both sides. So somebody's mates with the CEO and they get something over the line, and then the rest of the team's got to go and deliver it. And they're like, no way, this isn't on the roadmap. I've got no time for this. Or it's the opposite. Somebody is very excited and wants to change the world, and they go off and run this side project that nobody actually signed off for at a senior level. So you want to make sure that they've got the right holder support. Enough resources. People need enough resources to actually do these things, build these things, design these things, launch these things. And then the final one is a size mismatch. And this is typically where I would temper your expectations. Everybody instantly sees partnerships and goes, right, get me the Google partnership, get me the Amazon partnership, get me the Microsoft partnership. And I think if you're OpenAI, that's great. But even then, Apple Intelligence wasn't a great partnership from an execution point of view. But what we always try and tell people is never get into bed with an 800-pound gorilla. So if you're a fledgling company, you're growing, and you want to work with a big company, they're going to ask for a whole bunch of things that you either don't have or you can go and get, but will take a lot of resource and time. So what's your security protocol? What is the government body that you're assigned to? All these things. Do you have government regulation to work in these industries? And you can spin yourself around, and actually you can get dropped very quickly in these situations. Because if I am a small company and I get a £10 million partnership over the line, that's great. But if you are a large telco, that's about a day and a half's worth of revenue. So you've got, not even actually. So you've got to really understand, like, you're probably a very small part of their business. And actually what you want to do is work with smaller players, build up that competency, and then start launching bigger partnerships. Once you've got the model right, you've took out the barriers to entry, etc. So I would really sort of harbor this and internalize it. It's not always what it seems. Making it click. So how do you get it to work? Sorry, yeah. Sorry. Oh, no. Cool. I'm just wrapping up. So we'll.
All good?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Cool. All right. I can hear an echo. Yeah, I'll just finish up. So yeah, anyway, don't chase the fame. It's so easy to go, I want the big headline. I know I put headlines up, but I would say be prepared. Like, you want to understand a company as if you work there. That's really how you even unlock the really great partnership ideas. You say, okay, you're doing this, but how much better would it be if you could also do that? Or how much competition could you lock off by having this strategic fit? And you really want to know how they make money, what their future plans are, what the industry is looking like, what challenges they're facing. You need to get into the detail of how these companies operate. Enter open-minded. Everyone wants to think they've got the magic bullet partnership answer on entry, and actually go open-minded. Even if it is a pretty solid idea, you've got to feel like you built it together. And be partnership ready. I always say, if you can't sell your own app, if you're not driving downloads, if you're not keeping users, you can't really expect another partner to do that for you. Unless it completely transforms a product and addresses one of the core issues, then maybe. But the likelihood is, if you're not really getting the value across to users, etc., then you really need to work on that before you start really aggressively going after partnerships. So really working through the readiness of the company, etc., is a really key part as well. And focus on the focus. It's so easy to put big numbers on the board and get excited and tell your investors we're rich, and actually just take it step by step. I always like Jeff Bezos's quote, "Gradatim ferociter," which is step by step, ferociously. And I think that's the approach you want to take with partnerships, which is, big vision, but we're just head down, taking one step at a time, really moving at pace. And trustworthiness. So there's nothing that kills a partnership worse than a breakdown of trust. And I always use the example of Yeezy and Adidas, where you had a $5 billion company that was created by this great collaboration, and took the world. Everybody was loving the product, and obviously there was a separation and a lack of trust and reliability on their on that partnership, and it disappeared, right? So it just shows you, like, even a $5 billion partnership can go to nearly zero in a trustless world. So you want to make sure that you maintain a level of respect and trust for your partners, and treat it like you would any other relationship that's close to you. And always win-win-win. This is kind of an easy framework to think about partnerships. So you want to win, the partner wants to win, and the customer wants to win. So if you think about this TfL example I gave, if you were Google Maps, more people use the product, more people rely on it, more people are getting home safely. If you're TfL, then again, you're delivering better experiences to your constituents. More people are encouraged to cycle, more people feel empowered. And then you're the customer, you hopefully come home accident-free and with a lot less traffic as well. So you can always create these triangles, and anytime one of these goes away, the whole partnership goes away. So if it didn't really do anything for the customers, there's no real benefit there, it will disappear. If it was great for Google and the customer, but not for TfL, they would go and work with somebody else and deliver what they need to with their manifesto. So that's just a really easy framework to address a partnership idea across, which is, how am I winning? How's the partner winning? How's the customer winning? So hopefully that was useful. Happy to jump into some questions now. Happy to even brainstorm some ideas with people if they want to come on and discuss some stuff. We do this quite a lot. So
amazing. Sal, a lot of gold nuggets there, man. A lot of gold nuggets there. We're going to go ahead and open it up for questions. So if you have a question, go ahead and throw that in the comment section on LinkedIn, and I'll be sure to put it on the screen so Sal can answer that question. But I'm going to go ahead and start off because I had one. You addressed a lot of things in this presentation, Sal. One of the things that I wanted to bring up was, a lot of people are still in a very early stage with their app or whatever their company is, right? How do you know your app or whatever your company is partnership ready? And once you do figure that out, how do you know, like, who to actually go after? Like you mentioned, don't go after, you made the gorilla connection, right? Yeah. You mentioned don't go sleep, with an 800-pound gorilla. Like, walk us through that process of what you would be thinking in that situation.
Well, I think this is actually, it's a little bit like when you learn to drive, a lot of the time, a driving instructor prefers that you've never actually touched a steering wheel before, because you don't have the bad habits. You don't have the weight and the baggage that maybe people a little bit further on actually have. So you're actually at a beautiful time where you can think strategically about what would a killer partnership be to actually 3x the value of my product. And you can start looking at how you would insert that at each stage. And then you say, actually, this partnership is actually a core part of my launch plan. So I think that's how I'd look at it. And you want, it's the same question of, how do you eat an elephant piece by piece? You want to start off in a very localized hypothesis. You want to say, I think if I have this is going to catch on like wildfire, right? And if you can prove that with somebody because you can be very honest, you can be very honest with someone and say, we're just setting up, but here's why we're going to be different. We want to do a test, but look, you've got 20,000 customers. Let's take 200 of them. Let's see if this actually works. Let's go and find customers together. We'll run some ads and go and put people on our test flight and actually test this out. And then you can build and flex and go from there. So actually the operational cost of testing this stuff out could be a lot easier.
Yeah. Because like if you're anything like me, like you want to start swinging for the fences, right? When you launch a new business and you just want to go out and get the biggest partnerships out there, when in reality you may not be ready. And I feel like there's two sides to it. On the other side, there's, the biggest piece of it of all, which is the relationship. Do you have any tips for forming those relationships with maybe if it was kind of a bigger company than you, a little bit further along, and just getting in touch with those people and just knowing what to say and how to reach out?
Yeah. I think a lot of the magic sits in the idea. Very rarely will you come up. The thing about a partnership is it's self-organizing. Like, you don't need to really put too much effort into the commercials. They balance out as fair naturally. Because people will just stop doing it if it doesn't work anymore, right? So you're always incentivized to create this beautiful equilibrium. And it's the same with the idea. If you go to, that sleep cycle example, you say, why wouldn't you do this? Like, yeah, you're right. Like, this would just add so much value. All right, let's give it a go, right? So the idea that you're pitching them should be the way to open the door. But I think that falling back from that is actually maybe two other useful things. So one is being super honest about how you're going to go about it. Like, don't promise them the world and say, this is going to be $50 million for you now and give me all this effort. Like, make it super simple for them to say yes. Like, be impossible to ignore. And a lot of people don't map their own network. So a lot of what we do at QTA is aggregation of network. And how do we use that to get to the right people to discuss the right things? Look within people you've worked with before, someone that can give you an intro. And just, sincerely just come up to them and say, hey, like, this is what I've got a great idea I want to run by you. Let me know what you think. And it's a lot easier than people think. Come up with a good idea. The rest will take care of itself.
Ask, you shall receive. It's interesting, Sal, because I had this experience when I was launching my own app several years ago. And it goes back to the idea of launching MVP, right? Going out with something and then getting user feedback, refining as you go. And it's interesting because as I've done it with more and more people through working with other app startups, you learn that that's like really is the only way to dive into anything, is to just take that messy action on it, figure it out kind of like as you go, and then slowly things will come together as an MVP develops, right? I feel like there's kind of a similar way to do it with partnerships, right? Where you can kind of like dive into it, find a simple agreement to get started with. Maybe it's a shared project you start with, and then having that develop as it goes and the relationship of it. What advice would you give for kind of starting out like on a very simple basis if two companies are partnering?
Yeah. And again, this is actually the reason it's called Quick to Act, which is forget about this complicated pricing structure and who's going to take this percent in year 4, and like, just get going. Like, landing page, go and get 10 customers, talk to them, see if it's a real thing. That's another reason why you don't want to work with an 800-pound gorilla, which is, you've got a limited amount of time to prove this works and there's something there. And they are on WLT meetings and SLT meetings and sign off and bringing in ops and finance. Like, a large goal, what we're trying to do at QTA is actually have a one-day partnership where everything that I've showed you on that slide is actually executed in one day.
Interesting.
And we use the technology we've built, the data we have, the landing pages, the billing systems we've built, to actually just come up with an idea and execute the legals, everything in one day. And I think you want to get into that messy, because that's also where the beautiful stuff is. Like, again, like, you can learn about their company, but you're only going to really realize what this sort of new fit could look like and what it could be used for once you get going. And it's almost always better than you thought it was going to be. So yeah, just getting started, super simple, nice agreement of, yeah, we're not going to screw you over, and we're going to keep your data safe.
You guys are able to execute all of that in one day. Like, can you walk me through a little bit deeper of that process of, like, someone works with you at QTA? Like, what is that process like? And I'm sure it depends on what kind of company they are, what stage, what their goals are, but give me like a high level rundown there.
So the funny thing, so obviously I used to do tech partnerships. So the thing about QTA is, I call ourselves a tech company masquerading as a consultancy. So the goal was always to build super fast partnerships. And the company was actually formed after watching an episode of South Park. So I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's an episode of South Park on YouTube. You can watch it, called 6 Days to Air. And South Park go from idea on a whiteboard to handing the episode to Comedy Central in 6 days. Everything. Yeah, idea generation, legals, FX, storyboarding, voiceover, everything, 6 days. Like, they don't sleep, and my thing was, hold on, I don't think many partnerships are actually that much more complicated. And this was sort of before the advent of AI, but now we have internal partnership idea generators. We have network mapping. So when you come to QTA, you add your network to the central nodes. So if we want to talk to the CMO of Nike, for instance, we know exactly who in the company has a direct link to that person. We aggregate networks, so we get the best network and access to those things. We have infinite numbers of landing pages and modules. We have billing systems. We have AI that writes legal documents. So yeah, the idea is, if you have 2 QTA clients on either side, we can actually just click a button, and each of these process through an agentic layer gets basically executed and delivered. So you just check it once it's done.
With all of these new APIs and like AI tools coming out, like, what do you think? Obviously, the future of partnerships can only expand with how many new opportunities are going to be out there. Where do you see it heading?
Yeah, it's either going to be, well, there's going to have to be, I think the partnerships are going to get smaller, but there's going to be a whole lot more of them.
Yeah.
So of course the big ones are going to get done, the OpenAIs and the Microsofts building data centers and stuff like that. That's going to happen. But you might want a localized version of Waymo to interact with a nursery app. So you might want a driverless car to pick up your kids or whatever, right? And there might be a specialized partnership that gets done at that very local level. You might even do that per city, because the ease and the speed of getting it done is going to be so low that actually you'll be doing partnerships with everybody. So yeah, this is kind of the world that we're trying to prepare for, especially in a, we call it headless marketing, this agentic layer where agents are just talking to other agents. I think we saw this week OpenAI integrated Shopify into their platform. So you very soon be able to buy, your agent will be able to buy things for you on Shopify directly through OpenAI without you having to do anything.
Really?
So if this is the world that's going to be happening, then actually agents will be doing deals with other agents. And I think that's going to be a super interesting world as well. So
that's going to be interesting. Look forward to seeing that.
It's all happening.
Crazy. Well, Sal, tell me about your healthcare app, because we haven't really talked about your app too much. So
yeah,
Dogo, correct?
Dogo, yeah.
Dogo. Tell me about it. What's going on there?
Dogo is a healthcare charity that we set up to basically tackle critical cases in the developing world mainly, but we're active in Nigeria and Uganda. So we turn donations into free healthcare. So this was started during COVID, actually, where I was talking with my Hausa teacher, who's a northern Nigerian teacher. And I was like, how's COVID? He's like, what? I was like, how's COVID? He's like, oh, we don't talk about it here anymore. I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, oh, it's cholera now. I said, what? He goes, yeah, people are dying of cholera. And I said, huh? Like that's the water thing, right? And he's like, yeah. He goes, the street behind me, a 9-year-old girl died just last week. I said, well, what happened? And he said, well, no one could afford the treatment. I said, well, how much is it? $100, $200? He says, £3 to £5. So about $8, right? And I'm thinking, whoa, but it makes a lot of sense, right? If you're making $1 or $2 a day and you've got 7 children,
yeah,
it's literally the difference between feeding your family or losing a loved one. And what we then set up is basically 3 platforms that interact with each other. So we have the Dogo app that people can download. So if you go to Dogo Health, you can download the app, and basically you pledge a donation each month, starting at as low as £5. And we use that to deliver free healthcare. So we've got stands set up in Nigeria and Uganda in rural areas. And patients come there, they state their case. If they're approved based on our guidelines and we've got enough availability, we send them to a local hospital with a unique ID number. We've built a hospital app that the hospital used to process a patient. They can't create the ID number. It can only be created by a Dogo member of staff. They treat the patient, enter what was given, and then the patient walks out. And that app data goes to our central platform. We verify everything, and then we wire them automatically the money digitally. So there's no cash, everything's tracked. And through your app, each month, you're able to see the exact donation you gave down to the penny. So you're able to see who you helped and how it really impacted them.
That's so huge, being able to see like directly attributed to where your money is going. What has that process been like for you from development to getting that out there?
Yeah, well, Dogo is a walking example of what we do, right? Like it's stitched together by hospital partnerships that have, that are delivering this care, all across the world. Even the launch in Uganda we did, we partnered with another charity out there to do that as well. So, it's been really humbling. So I'm Nigerian myself, and being able to use technology to change thousands of people's lives, we're literally seeing, 3-year-olds having heart palpitations, and parents are praying. That's all they can do is pray. And then somebody tells them, oh, you can actually go to Dogo and they'll go and help you, and we rush them to the hospital. And next week you see a video of that child running around. It's, I think that's what technology is for, right? It's a joy of, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Sal, where can people find you? Where can they look up QTA? How can they get involved? If they have questions, either if someone's watching right now or for the people watching in the future on the replay, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn, just Sal Mohammed. Just shoot a message over and I'll accept, just so you watch the video. And yeah, come to one of our events. Usually run a whole host of events in London if you're ever around. I'm in New York right now if anyone wants a coffee. And you can also check out qta.group and you can see a little bit about QTA, or you can go to dogoapp.org and you can see a bit more about Dogo as well.
Amazing. Sal, I'm actually looking forward to going through the replay today and pulling all your gold nuggets. So much value today. Thank you so much for joining us. Get down to Nashville soon, all right?
No problem. Thank you for having us. And yeah, I'll be more than happy to head to Nashville and catch some good music with you.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, yes, there is. All right, man. Well, I'll see you soon.
Brilliant. Have a great one. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.